This is Quincy. It was once a thriving settlement under the protection of the Minutemen, until one day, a squad of gunners attacked the town. The battle was going well for the Minutemen. However, a Minuteman named Clint betrayed the settlement by opening its gates, giving the gunners full access into the settlement. The battle was devastating, with only a small group of Minutemen managing to escape. The fall of Quincy happened a few months ago now. In this time, the Minutemen have managed to rebuild and expand their reach back throughout the Commonwealth. The gunners noticed the Minutemen's rise and tried to stop them before they could become a threat. So far, the gunners have not been successful, as the Minutemen have been able to hold off the gunner attacks. The Minutemen have recently rebuilt their previous HQ, the castle, with the castle now in the hands of the Minutemen, granting them full artillery and radio support. They can either retake Quincy now, or risk the gunners combining their forces and destroying the Minutemen once again. With no other choice, the leaders of the Minutemen have made a plan for retaking Quincy. The general of the Minutemen will gather a strike force and lead them towards Quincy. Once they arrive, they will make their way towards this red rocket, where they will discuss the plan of attack for the final time and hold back until nighttime. As the hours of darkness set on the Commonwealth, the strike force will position to the west side of Quincy as the general presses forward, throwing the first of 3 artillery smoke grenades. As the artillery begins raining down, the strike force will regroup and charge through the western side of town, securing this church before pushing further into the settlement. Once the church has been secured, the second artillery grenade will be thrown into the center of town, where the Minutemen will then flank around the bombardment and catch the gunners retreating from the artillery. Once the center of town is clear, the strike force will hunker down and stop anyone from reinforcing the bridge. The general will make his way up to the bridge, which is where he will eliminate Clint. With the leader of this gunner group down, the gunners will begin to scramble. The Minutemen strike force will hold their position until the final artillery on the east section of town has subsided, successfully pushing the gunners out and retaking Quincy for the Minutemen. With Quincy now reclaimed, we can start to rebuild. Before we begin, we first need to gather up some resources. There's a fair chunk of scrap left over from the castle rebuild, but to have a decent start, it'll be best to get some more. The castle is producing an overflow of purified water. We can then take that purified water to the Diamond City market and trade them in for junk shipments. Now, with a healthy amount of scrap at our disposal, we can begin rebuilding. The first building that I want to rebuild is this one. The structure has taken some significant damage from the war, so the first thing that I want to do is repair the structure itself. Now, with the structure repaired, we can begin furnishing each room, giving them each their own purpose. There's a gun sign already on the building, and I think it's fitting that where we can, we try to rebuild Quincy somewhat resembling what it may have once been. With that in mind, let's make this room the weapon store. It's turned out well so far, but we'll come back to this room once we have a way to generate power. Sticking with the theme of rebuilding the settlement how it may have once been, there's a diner sign here, so we'll build this room into the diner. And with that, the diner is done. Well, maybe not. You see, it's quite dark in here, similar to the weapon store. So now we need to find a place for power production. I could use one of these rooms, but I wanted them to be apartments. Maybe we could build a shack somewhere close by to house the power. Actually, this spot here on the roof will be a pretty good spot for power. And now, with a generator added to the settlement and wired on this entire building, we can begin to add some lights. Okay, now the weapon store's looking much better. I also added some weapon displays high on the wall, so people can't just walk in and grab a weapon. Now this room here, I was thinking could be a bar. You know, we have the diner over here, so I think it fits in well. I'll start by boarding up the windows. And of course, a bar needs, you know, a bar. I think this bar turned out nicely. It's not super fancy, but that's kind of the point. It is the apocalypse. Now, there's 3 rooms left to build in this building. This room here, I want to be Sturge's room. Sturges likes to build things, and he's the mechanic guy. So I made sure to portray that in Sturge's room. You may be wondering why I'm building Sturge's a room. Well, if you didn't pick it up in the intro, Preston's gang originally lived in Quincy. So keeping with the theme, it makes sense that we give each of them their own place in Quincy. Now, I want this room to be for a settler. Just some random settler. Whoever this random settler is, they now have an apartment. And now there's one last room in this building left to furnish. And if we head out to the balcony of this room, we find a chem cooler named Mama Murphy's stash. So, you know what that means. This room is going to be Mama Murphy's room. But before we build her room, I want to first give her a garden on the roof. There is a decent sized area here. Okay, I did manage to fit a greenhouse up here. This totally isn't so that Mama Murphy can grow ingredients to make her own chems. Now, let's build Mama Murphy's room. And here's what I came up with. I mean, she really is styling. She's got a skylight, it's pretty cozy in here, and she has a garden on the roof. I'm sure Mama Murphy will be happy with this. The greenhouse on the roof ate up all of my glass, but I have an idea on a location that may have plenty of glass. The Beantown Brewery. There's only a few raiders inside, and oh yeah, here we go. So many bottles. Finding locations like this that specialize in certain components makes me happy. But I'm a bit of a weirdo. The next building that I want to rebuild is this one. Opposite of the first one which we rebuilt. Similar to the last one, I patched up the holes in the walls and built a roof where one was missing. Now, the theme for this building, it's kind of a shithole. I mean, not any more than any other building, but there's just so much stuff in here that can't be scrapped. So, to fit in with the scrappy look with the interior, I think a community housing area where people can just chuck down a mattress and keep their heads under a roof. After about an hour of decorating, I think I've come up with something that works. This is also a good way to get more beds in the settlement, and we're going to need a bed for each settler that eventually moves in. If we look at the size of Quincy, it's quite large, so there's going to be a lot of settlers. The next building that I want to rebuild is the church. With this build, I have a plan to join 2 builds together. At the front of the church will be a general store, sectioned off by a wall, with the back being a warehouse for the Minutemen. It's quite a large structure, so I'm hoping that the back area can give that warehousey feel. Okay, so here's how the general store turned out, and then through the door is the storage area. It definitely turned out well enough for what I was thinking of. This whole build just makes sense to me. A general store connected to the Minutemen's main storage, making it easy to restock the general store and protect both the assets. Now that we have some structures ready for settlers, it's time to get them moving in, and for that, we're going to need a recruitment beacon. The best spot in my mind for a recruitment beacon is somewhere high up. So let's build a recruitment beacon on this roof here. This area isn't anything crazy, but it gets the point across. Of course, someone needs to take care of the beacon, and this is where that person lives. The building underneath the recruitment beacon has 3 stories, the bottom being a pharmacy, the middle a bedroom, and the upstairs an attic. There's a terminal downstairs named June's Terminal, so this building will belong to June and Marcy Long. With the building repaired, now it's time to furnish each floor. I want to keep the pharmacy intact, but if the pharmacy is going to sell chems, then it will need somewhere to make chems. So let's turn the attic into a lab. They now have the means to create chems and even grow their own ingredients up here. Now, let's decorate Marcy and June's room. When June and Marcy move in, they will now have somewhere to live. To finish this building off, let's decorate the pharmacy on the first floor. A nice, well-stocked pharmacy, ready to supply Mama Murphy when she's too high to make her own chems. Moving back outside, there was this flat roof next to the recruitment beacon, so I built the guy that works on it a patio area here. And the building next to that already has a Minuteman flag on it, and on the second floor there's a terminal named Hollis's Terminal. Hollis was one of the original Minutemen who defended Quincy against the gunner attack. Given that he's no longer here, I think it's fitting that we give this building to Preston. Upstairs is a meeting room and an office area for Preston, and sectioned off by this wall is Preston's bedroom. Downstairs in this building is another one of those rooms where most of the junk can't be scrapped, but I think that this Minuteman sleeping quarters still looks pretty neat. Now let's move to the outskirts of Quincy and start giving the settlement some defences. The east part of town is quite dense, but most of the buildings can't be entered. However, we can still build on the roofs. So I'm thinking that on each building on the edge of town, we build guard outposts, where Minutemen can defend the perimeter of Quincy. And here's the first guard outpost area, which I finished. I made sure to give them some shade, and of course plenty of ammo in case of an attack. There's also a shack up here for one of the guards. The other side of town has the church as a lookout, so to match that, let's build a watchtower on this side of town. This watchtower is quite similar to the one that I built in the Sanctuary video. I wanted it to look scrappy, and I think that it fits in pretty well. Now, I want to build the Minuteman Guards Barracks. There are some beds for Minutemen in Preston's house, but in my mind, they are for the guards that patrol around town. I want a guards barracks on the east part of town for the guards that defend this area. This old police station will be the perfect fit for the guard barracks. This building was a pretty fun one to rebuild. I made upstairs the sleeping quarters, and the downstairs is where the Minutemen come to relax and, of course, eat. The east part of town is definitely getting its defences up, but the pathways into the town are still left open. Let's wall off some roads and leave the others open for designated entrances. The entrance to the east part of town is next to the watchtower and guard barracks, so people will be flanked by Minutemen if they try to sneak in. I also squeezed in a settler's shack just up the road from the entrance. I'm trying to make the town feel more alive the closer into the centre that you get. Adding little shacks like this help get that feeling across. Now, let's move over to the west part of town. There's a cemetery here out front of the church, with some gourds already planted in it. So, let's turn this area into Quincy's farm. I swapped out the gourds for moot fruit and tato crops, whilst also making the area more defensible by adding barbed wire walls and turrets. This road here is another entrance into Quincy. To make this entrance more defendable, let's add a guard post on this roof. I built a scaffold coming up to the roof where we have a Minuteman's house and of course some cover which will protect the guard who watches over the entrance. This bus here at the entrance couldn't be scrapped, so I turned it into a bit of a blockade for the gate. Continuing on the theme of farms, I now want to build a farmer's market. Now I just need to find a place to build it. There is this parking lot behind Quincy, but it's not really in town. Okay, this spot here may just be perfect. Alright, this area turned out great. There's a cornfield adding to the overall food production of Quincy, and of course the market itself. A barn with plenty of produce for sale. On top of Preston's house is a path leading to the highway. There is also another entrance into Quincy along this road. To finalise Quincy's defences at the entrances, I want to add a guard outpost on top of the house which we built for Preston. This actually turned out pretty cool. I managed to support a shack up here, which does have a pretty good view onto the road leading into town. Quincy's coming along pretty well so far. We have most of the town surrounded in perimeter defenses, plenty of beds, stores for the citizens, and food to keep the people of Quincy fed. There's still some work that needs to be done though. I still want to add some water production, and I also want to build on the highway going over Quincy. The highway is 2-tiered, so let's begin work on the lower tier first. Let's build a clothing store right on the entrance to the bridge. It's a pretty quaint little shack, but tucked up under here, I think that it looks nice. I walled off this road on the bottom layer of the highway. I was thinking that this area leading up to the wall could be a street with houses that are still under construction. I like the idea of an area still being under construction. It adds to the story of the settlement, giving a sense of the town continuing to grow. And with that done, that's the bottom layer of the highway complete. Now, let's move on up to the upper layer. There originally isn't a whole lot going on up here. There's a shack where Clint lived and a sheltered area between these two trucks. The west part of the highway is on an angle, which will make it difficult to build anything on. So we'll wall that section off and focus the buildings towards the east part of the highway. The first build that I want to do on the upper level is a surgery. Now, we already have a pharmacy, but I think an area dedicated to surgery for wounded Minutemen is fitting. These construction hubs worked quite well for the structure, and inside, it's pretty much all business. Nowhere for people to sit and wait, as this is pretty much strictly just for emergencies. Moving past the two trucks, I was thinking of a sky garden, where the residents living on the highway can grow their crops. Okay, this might be my new favourite way of making greenhouses. The arched pieces just work so well for this. We don't have a designated workshop in this settlement yet, so let's build one next to the greenhouse. I like how this warehouse structure turned out, and inside there's everything the settler needs to repair or upgrade their weapons and armor. I also built this shack next to the greenhouse and workshop, and inside it might just be the coziest shack in the entire settlement. After adding a couple of wind power generators, I think that we can call the highway complete. Quincy has definitely come a long way since the beginning of the rebuild, but we're still yet to build any water production. Behind Quincy is a car park, which is sat above the water bank. Considering this is the only water nearby to Quincy, this is where we will start the water operation. Let's start, of course, by adding some water purifiers. And then the settlers are going to need a way to get down here. So the water purifiers are built, but it'd be a shame to leave this whole parking lot empty. So I think an outskirts village with some defenses watching over the water production would be perfect. I don't know what I'm going to call this, maybe the parking lot village? It did turn out pretty great. I like the watchtower in the center of the parking lot, and then there's 3 shacks tucked up against Quincy's retaining wall. And of course, there's some defenses watching over the entrance into this area. And with that done, Quincy is now a 3-layered settlement, with the town itself, the highway, and of course the parking lot village. The settlement is now ready to be occupied by the Minutemen, and also of course by settlers. We can't forget about getting the original Quincy settlers in here, and plenty of Minutemen who can patrol the outposts that we built, and finally some settlers who work in the stores, grow the crops, and continue to build the infrastructure of Quincy. Now with the settlement populated, we can call Quincy rebuilt.
Commonwealth. What kind of things, you ask? Well, that they have taken over the castle, which I guess was theirs a long time ago, but hasn't been in a while. The Minutemen are there now. That's good for them, and I guess for everyone else too. So, yeah. How about some music?